like to do today is explain just a little bit about how the relational learning chart depicts how learning actually takes place in the brain. Utilizing the new really worthwhile learnings in neuroscience and neurobiology and neuroplasticity that allow us to understand how the brain operates, what chemicals are affected at certain levels of learning, of what neural pathways can be formed and new circuits can be formed at the higher levels of learning, and all of the various steps that are occurring not only in a student's mind, but in their body as they progress through the levels of the chart. Hopefully this will be helpful to new teachers and teachers, veteran teachers who've had the opportunity to be working with students for some time, to understand that we simply have to put relationship first. Them. We all remember our very best teachers. Sadly, we also remember some of our worst, but the facts are, in every case, it is the teacher that made the difference in allowing them to have the emotional stability to work through the phases of relational learning so that they can utilize that yearning in co-creation. People need to be able to get along, they need to cooperate, they need to communicate, and in the ultimate, they have to co-create in order to really make this society what it needs to be. I think we've regressed in that regard over the last numbers of years. But in '95, Goldman wrote, if your emotional abilities are not in hand, you're not able to manage your distressing emotions. And if you can't have empathy, and you can't have effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are, you're not going to be able to go very far. And I think today that's more and more true. And for a society who really wants to continue to compete, we have to get along and we have to be entirely co-creative in the things that we do. One of the things that's developed in the years since we wrote the original book, Relational Learning, is the development of really, really new learnings in the field of neurobiology and neuroplasticity. And in that field, we now understand how the brain operates, how the brain emits brain chemicals at certain levels of understanding, and how people progress through a really understandable progression of learning in the classroom. There isn't a teacher that doesn't know that if you have that class the first day of school, you have a lot of kids who are basically frightened, who are in some level of, and we call this in the book, the recognition level of fight, flight, or freeze. They're actually afraid. They're hypervigilant, they worry, they're fearful, they're producing stress hormones like adrenalin and cortisol, and it really affects their learning. For years, I've told the story of a high school freshman that picked up a schedule on the first day of school at the table set out in the front of the high school. He took that schedule, turned out he got the wrong schedule and was following somebody else's schedule. He followed that schedule for 2 weeks, afraid to say anything, afraid to tell the teacher that he wasn't that person. Ultimately, a band teacher who realized he had no musical skill and not even an instrument, pointed it out to the principal. Did that get it out? And that's indicative at an extreme level of the kind of fear that's really working at what we call the recognition level. In that case, the sympathetic nervous system is really disrupting the brain. It's not allowing the circuits of the brain to function effectively. And the adrenaline, norepinephrine is also increasing along with the heart rate, and it's very, very difficult for kids to learn. Teachers know that. They see the stress in students when they're given tests or standardized tests, and they must acknowledge that in terms of all learning that takes place. So their job is to follow the chart which indicates that recognition level, they must be able to relate to those students in such a way as to begin to establish some sort of trust that gets them out of that primitive brain mentality of fight, or freeze. We call the next level of the chart understanding. And while at that level, the student's still in the sympathetic nervous system, they are still hesitant at some level to buy in completely to the learning. They are developing some understanding of the content of that learning, and they are experiencing less stress, and their brain is actually operating more effectively. They're moving out of that primitive brain, they're producing less stress hormones, and they're moving up the learning chart to ultimately being able to incorporate that learning as part of who they are, valuing it and engaging with others. At the valuing level of our chart, that's the parasympathetic nervous system that's operating, and the body's moving from a state of real dis-ease to ease, and they're establishing a sense of homeostasis. They're beginning to clear their mind. They're more clear, they're more calm, they have a more calm brain, and they're buying in and they're fitting the learning to their own values. We all do that. And it isn't until we do and we see that it has value to us personally that we really can move on with learning. At that level, the frontal lobe is operating. At that level, there are positive brain chemicals now that are impacting how we learn. Those chemicals of dopamine and serotonin and really positive endorphins are allowing them to decrease their heart rate, to really relax and buy into the learning. The co-creating level, the parasympathetic system is truly working. At that level, they're producing serotonin. At that level, they are thinking creatively. At that level, they have really positive endorphins that are giving them clarity and possibility and expansivity, so that they are calm enough, they feel safe, and they are now rewiring new circuits with the newly understood sense of neuroplasticity. They are actually changing their brain, developing new capacities in their conscious mind, and allowing those new capacities to take flight in working with other people. And the working with other people drives it home. The oxytocin now in working with other people is flowing. And at this level, they're with the new neural pathways, they're really effectively changing their brain. They are now, as Dan Goleman talked about it, using emotional intelligence. They not only have learned, but they have learned to use the knowledge in a capacity that can make them better and can make society at large a better place for all of us. So we have to say that that's extremely important and pretty integral to understanding what it is that a teacher must do in the classroom. They must put relationship first to establish the trust, to allow the fear to dissipate, to move from the primal brain to the evolved brain, to allow the positive chemicals to flow, and to open up the neural pathways so that neuroplasticity can really take place.